Okay, welcome everybody. I'll take, always wait a minute or two to let everyone into the room. And if anyone is able to follow Danny's lead by having your video on, that would be amazing. Thank you, Danny. It certainly makes the experience a lot more interactive. So if you can put your video on, that would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. All right. All right. Okay, excellent. Yeah, great. These videos coming in. Just going to put everyone on mute to let everyone into the room here. Get started in just a moment. Maybe while we're waiting, I'm curious where everyone's dialing in from. If you wouldn't mind just putting into the chat where you're dialing in from, that would be amazing. Thank you. Sweden. I'm half Norwegian, Danny, so I know that neck of the woods. Missouri, I'm half American as well, so I know a lot of those places. Okay, who's back? And then from there. And, all right. And we'll go ahead and let some of these AI agents in, knocking on the door. Soon you'll just be able to send your AI agents will come to the meeting to talk to my AI agent. Nobody will do anything. Okay. Okay. I think we can go ahead and get started. Jakob, would you mind just taking over the room admissions? That'd be great. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks very much for taking some time out. We're doing these every Thursday. So we started last Thursday. We're picking a new topic every week. And all of these talks are in celebration of the CEO Accelerator. So I'll put that link into the chat there. And I'll talk about the accelerator in just a second, but just a quick intro from me. So my name is Eric Partaker. We're probably connected either through the newsletter or on LinkedIn. And I started off my career as a consultant with McKinsey Company. Was then part of the early team at Skype, helping build that before our exit to eBay. Then built a chain of Mexican restaurants, if you can believe it, having missed Mexican food growing up on it in Chicago in the UK. And about 3 years ago or so, moved down to Portugal. And these days, I coach and mentor CEOs, helping them scale their companies. We invest in some of the companies as well. And then if you follow along on LinkedIn, a little less than 2 years ago, I started to post for the first time on LinkedIn as well. And, fell in love with kind of that whole realm and, sharing my thoughts about various things there too. So the CEO Accelerator. So what is this all about? And this relates to our talk today. And by the way, even if the CEO Accelerator is not something for you, no worries. You're going to walk away with very tangible, very practical things that you can implement from today's talk for immediate benefit. That's what I always make sure with every single talk that I do. So you need not join the accelerator if that's not something that you're interested in. You still will walk away with tons of value from today. So I in my day job, if you will, I coach and mentor CEOs, as I mentioned. And one of the things that I always tell a new CEO that I'm working with is, look, if you want to scale your company, you have to recognize that that's the hardware. And if the hardware is to operate correctly, we need to code the software correctly. And the software are two other pillars that you need to scale in parallel to the company, the leadership of the person at the helm, and are they operating to their fullest potential? So really, to scale, to grow efficiently, you need to scale a company, your leadership, and yourself all at the same time. And I'm just going to do a very quick screen share here before we get into today's talk. So this is the accelerator. Again, the link is in the chat. If you have not seen it, you can check it out on your own. We are opening up for our next cohort in January. So the first cohort is going on right now. Next cohort opens up in January, and we're taking a limited number of waitlist applications right now. And the accelerator delivers 3 outcomes. It's going to help you scale your company, become a great CEO, unlock your full potential. And who is this for? Well, it's very similar to today's talk. It's for the same group of people. So either you are a CEO, you are a senior leader who's aspiring to reach that level at some point, or perhaps you are a general manager, operate your own P&L business unit, and you have CEO-like responsibilities. So if you fit any of those criteria, then the accelerator would be a great fit for you. And it's built on, which very much relates to a lot of the subject matter in my talks, on the intersection of 3 circles, right? So company building, leadership development, and peak performance. And why these 3 things? Because I've seen countless times where you look from the outside in and a company appears to be doing great, but when you get in on the inside, the leadership is toxic. Or I've seen many situations where the company looks great on the outside, then you get in on the inside. The leadership looks great as well, but when you dig deep with the leaders, you find that they're struggling, they're not as productive as they would want to be, or on the verge of burnout. So you really need to scale, once again, all 3 of these pillars, which very much relates to the content in my talks and the things that I teach online and within the programs. And I'll give you just one more minute overview of this, and then, of course, you can look at it on your own. You'll find on the website, on the CEO Accelerator site, a bunch of testimonials from existing clients who I've helped with the scaling of their companies. Plenty of testimonials here. Everything from, so Ali is a YouTuber, has built an incredible business off the back end of becoming the world's most followed productivity expert. Aid here runs Cooper Perry in the UK, big business, 265 million in revenue, 65 million EBITDA. Leah, on the other hand, is other end of the spectrum. So it's a pre-revenue startup, disruptive deep tech, not there with those types of numbers yet, but certainly there with the ambition. And in the program, and I'm going to be giving you a taste of some of the things that you would learn in the CEO Accelerator in today's talk. But in the program, it consists of 4 main components. So over 12 weeks together, which again starts from mid-January, but you can join the waitlist already now. In the course of 12 weeks together, there are 12 masterclasses in each of the 3 pillars: scaling the company, leadership, and self. Those occur on Wednesdays. At 3:30 UK, 10:30 Eastern. On Fridays, there's a weekly coaching and mentoring session where I coach and mentor all the participants directly. There's tools and frameworks in the program, and then you're joining a community and also getting the accountability of being with a group of like-minded peers. Guest speakers as well, always in the program, and every cohort. This is the current guest speakers in the current cohort. We'll have these guest speakers and many more in the second cohort to come. And if you go to the site, you will find a very detailed week by week overview of the curriculum. So what is it that you're going to learn? Why is it important? And what are the actual learning outcomes from every module? So everything from strategy to systems to attracting, retaining, developing talent to leadership and management essentials, some of which we're going to be going through today. How to master difficult conversations, conflict and feedback, and also the self. So what do you have to do to develop the right sort of mindset? How do you strengthen your awareness, antifragility, time management, productivity? How do you surround yourself with wisdom? So I'll stop the share there, but that is the CEO Accelerator once again. And if you are interested, we are accepting waitlist applications for the January cohort. And that means if you join the waitlist, what that means is that once enrollment opens, you're first in line, because we have limited capacity, of course. So you're first to protect the experience for everyone. So you're first in line when the enrollment period opens again, which is very soon. So without further ado, today I wanted to talk about 5 qualities that I have recognized in world-class, that all world-class CEOs share. These aren't the only qualities that are important, but these are the ones that I've found universally across the best. And again, even if you're not a CEO, this is super relevant because all these, if you are a leader or a manager, these qualities still apply. If you develop these and become proficient in these qualities, I'm going to be talking about what they are. I'm going to give you very practical, tangible ways to develop each. Theory is great, but only if it translates to practice. So that's why we always focus on practicality. Now, what is this based on? So this is based on my time working with Fortune 50 CEOs at McKinsey Company, working with their leadership teams, building my own companies, and also the over 100 CEOs that I've helped with the scaling of their companies to date. So it's a pretty significant, large data set, and it spans a lot of different industries as well as sectors. And the quick overview is that we're gonna go through today 3 cognitive abilities, okay? 1 key interpersonal skill and 1 key character trait. Okay, so 3 cognitive abilities, 1 key interpersonal skill, and 1 key character trait. The first thing that we're going to talk about, first cognitive ability, and you may not think of it as a cognitive ability, but it is. And the one-word distillation is visionary. Now, Marcus Buckingham, one of my favorite authors, he once said, "Great leaders rally people to a better future." Or to put it another way, a great leader has the ability to paint a picture of what's ahead and get everyone excited about achieving it. Now, this was critical in my own journey. When I was part of the early team at Skype, our tagline was, the whole world can talk for free. It wasn't, become the #1, voice over internet telephony application. It was the whole world can talk for free. It was a much, much, much bigger vision. And that helped us in our David versus, Goliath situation. We were a very, very small software company. But we went from nothing to a multi-billion-dollar exit in the space of just 3 years. And certainly there was a lot of factors, obviously, that, helped power that incredible trajectory. But the vision was absolutely critical. And being visionary, so what does that mean? That means having the ability to see the big picture and plan for the future. It's not just like painting the vision. It's about seeing the big picture and planning for the future. So how do you strengthen your visionary leadership? Well, I want to give you 4 different ways that you can strengthen this muscle, this visionary leadership muscle. Number 1 is define your inspiring why. If you've seen, for example, Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, very, very famous, talk, it's all about, what is the why that extends beyond the company? What is the why that creates some kind of social impact, that does some kind of good in the world? Again, back to the Skype days, the whole world can talk for free. That extended beyond, the revenue and the profit of the company. When we were building the restaurant chain, we sold burritos and tacos, but that wasn't our vision, right? That wasn't, our purpose. That wasn't the thing that we said that we were all about. Our 7 words there, because the whole world can talk for free, just 7 words. Our 7 words here were make the world a more vibrant place. Now, that might sound like soft stuff, and does that really matter? 100%. Because if you think about things purely from a financial point of view, for example, well, equity ownership in a company is, often quite limited. It doesn't necessarily extend to every single person in a company. There's varying rates of compensation throughout a company. So not everyone will have the same financial incentive. So for example, to become #1 or #2 in every market that you operate in, this is GE's old, BHAG or big, hairy, audacious goal. That's great. It's great for the shareholders, perhaps. That's great maybe for the senior leadership. But does that really inspire the person on the front line that, doesn't have their, a piece of the pie in the same way that those other folks do? I hardly think so. And so we have to think, much bigger than that. What's the good that we're doing in the world? Extend, and the simple tactic or the simple tool that you use here is, what are we doing that extends beyond, the company? What's the positive impact that we are having in the world, with the CEO Accelerator as an example, which this talk is celebrating. The CEO Accelerator, our vision is to help the most important part of the global economy, SMB leaders, or SME, if you're based in Europe, small and medium-sized enterprises, or small and medium-sized businesses in the US, same thing. These are the backbone of the global economy, but they're often underserved and overlooked, right? The VC money tends to not flow in the direction of these companies, yet they account for the majority of global employment. They account for the majority of entities, and they account globally for the majority of GDP, if you look at individual GDP across all the major markets. So you want to define your inspiring why. Number two, we have to, with our vision in mind, we have to break it down into visionary goals, right? We need a roadmap to achieve that vision. We can't just state the vision, because if it feels so lofty and unachievable, it might be nice to hear in a moment, but people won't truly be inspired by it. And that's a key thing that you're trying to do with visionary leadership, especially in an SMB environment where resources are incredibly limited, right? We need to be able to tap deeply into the people that we're leading, right? To get to the potential that perhaps isn't yet out there and on the table. And when it comes to setting clear goals, even if your vision feels insurmountable, the key thing here is to just think about driving at night, right? If I'm driving from New York City to LA, I don't need to, see the whole distance there. I just need the lights in the car to illuminate the next, 100 yards ahead. And that's just going to keep going. And eventually, with the vision in mind, the destination in mind, eventually I will get there. But I don't need to illuminate the entire way. And so the key thing that your people need clarity on is often, what are we working on next quarter? And how does that relate to, say, the annual plan? Of course, you can take this up a degree to a 3-year plan and a 5-year, but it's often clarity on that next 100 yards ahead, which is the most important to make crystal clear throughout an organization and critical to bringing your visionary leadership to light. If you can co-create those goals, by all means you should, because when people have the chance to weigh in, they're far more likely to buy into whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And trust me, if you're going for something truly visionary, it will feel daunting. And so that means uncertainty and doubt can run rather high. So again, giving people the chance to co-create in quarterly planning sessions, at least put their 2 cents in. If people are able to weigh in, they are more likely to buy in. Number 3 for visionary leadership is just staying informed. And if I were to open up your calendars, for example, I would be curious to see what percentage of your time is going to keeping abreast of market trends, perhaps attending a conference or two, having networking discussions, speaking with other external stakeholders. Because sometimes you get so caught in what you're doing that you don't keep the antenna up for what's going around you. And that's often where you'll pick up key visionary cues or clues that can illuminate the grand vision ahead. If you look at my calendar, probably on a given week, because I color code these, they're all purple. Anything that deals with like staying informed, whether it's me doing some self-study or me networking or meeting with another person, that gets color-coded purple. And it's probably anywhere from, depending on the week, it could be anywhere from 10 to 30% of my week, right? But it's there and it's in the calendar. And then the last thing with visionary leadership, you're not leading in a visionary way if nobody understands the vision, or if nobody remembers what it is. And so the key thing here is to communicate, right? So we need to communicate your vision, and it needs to be communicated repeatedly. When we were building the restaurant chain, when we were building Skype, everyone in those 2 examples, everyone knew that we were respectively, making the world a more vibrant place, or the whole world can talk for free. Everyone in the company knew that. They knew what the vision was about, and they knew why we were going for that. And that created a deeper motivating force in people than you would have if you're purely pursuing a financial goal or trying to maximize your KPIs. I like to I wrote in a little metaphor here. I like to think of visionary leadership as as a lighthouse keeper, right? That's what you are as a visionary leader. And you're like a lighthouse. You're guiding ships safely to shore. You're illuminating, right, the way forward. And that's the essence of it. So cognitive ability number one is develop your visionary leadership. You can do that in 4 ways: by defining your inspiring why, by setting very clear goals. Don't get obsessed with going A to Z. At least go A to B. Get the first 100 yards, like driving at night. That's what you need. Make sure that you're staying informed, networking, staying abreast of what's going on, and over communicate that vision in team meetings, in one-to-ones, in town halls. Constantly remind people of what you are doing and why it matters for the world, for your customers, for key stakeholders. Okay, we said we were going to go through 3 cognitive abilities, 1 key interpersonal skill, and 1 key character trait. So we're going to go to the second cognitive ability, and it's all about critical thinking. My obsession with critical thinking started before I was an entrepreneur, as I mentioned earlier. So before building my own companies, before helping build Skype, I was a consultant. So I worked at McKinsey Company, and one of the things that got drilled into my head at McKinsey Company is how to take just about any problem out there and break it down and solve the component parts. It's an incredibly valuable skill, and it's incredibly important as a leader. But how do you actually do that? How do you develop your critical thinking? And you can kind of think of critical thinking as a chess game, right? Where you have to constantly monitor what your opposition is doing, what you're doing, and you're constantly thinking, several moves ahead. A couple of things that help in this regard. One is to make sure that you're tuned in to the entire organization. Okay, you need to benefit from all the perspectives that form, what your company, what your team is. And it's on you to make sure that you're connecting with those people, you're soliciting their thoughts, their feedback, their opinions. And it's very, very important to recognize the differences in people, right? Some people are extroverted. You don't even have to ask them. They're going to tell you. Introverted people, they're the quiet ones in the room. They might not feel comfortable speaking in public. It's on you to make sure that in your one-to-ones, if you want to get feedback and input on something, and why on earth wouldn't you, that you're soliciting that input and you're making sure that you're adjusting that solicitation or the amount of effort that you need to put into to get that to the people that you're leading, because everyone is different. So benefit from all the voices in your company. That will help you think more critically. Why? Because it allows you to take in more perspectives. And this is not, decision-making by consensus. That's not what I mean. But when you're able to consider multiple angles, you're able to kind of have that debate in your head, do the bit of the trial, if you will, and then make your judgment and make your decision. And it's never based on perfect information. Right. So how do we strengthen our critical thinking muscle? I'm going to give you 3 ways. One is try to think in components. So when you're looking at a problem, try to break it down into its constituent parts. When you're performing an analysis, try to, break the analysis into its segments. When you're looking at a group of customers or clients, try to categorize them. Try to think in components. There are natural categories and groupings that emerge in the world. And if you just look for them, you will see them. And when you get into the habit of doing this, it really starts to simplify everything. It's almost like seeing the matrix in a way. You start to see things that everything that appears to be complex suddenly feels a bit simpler. And let me give, and you can use this literally for anything. So let me think of a very, okay, so I mentioned earlier at the start of the talk that I started a post on LinkedIn last year in January 2023. And one of the, and it's been a rocket ship of a journey. I think I had like about 20,000 followers, had never posted anything, and now it's 800 something. And one of the key things that I started to do was recognize patterns. right? So, and see the components. So I'll just give you a very, very quick example, and whether or not you want to, start to post on LinkedIn doesn't even matter. This is just to illustrate the point. So with LinkedIn, for example, you'll see posts in your feed, and probably you look at them and you go, oh, yeah, that's a post. I see components in those posts. And so the components that I see, and each of these components could lead to virality and a lot of attention and a lot of engagement, or might not. And so you have the image, right, of a post. You have the hook, or the first two lines of text or so, right, before you click see more to expand the caption, right? That's a component, a standalone component. And then you have the caption itself, right? And then you might have a call to action in that caption, right, at the very, very bottom. So there's 4 different components there. And success, if I see like a post take off, I know it's not taking off for no reason. There's a reason, and it's contained in my mind. It's, critically thinking about it, it's something to do with those components, right? And I will look at those components and try to deduct what are the viral success factors that are powering each of those viral components. That's just one quick example. Number 2, critical thinking, 80-20 thinking. So again, the world is nonlinear. 20% of the success that you experience in life, 80% of the success that you experience in life is going to come from 20% of your decisions. Probably 80% of the pain you feel from the mistakes in your life will come from 20% of your decisions, right? 20% of the people in your network will account for 80% of the benefit that your network provides. So you have to look for the leverage is the point, right? Because things are nonlinear. And why this is important is because otherwise you'll be boiling the ocean to get like a single hot, cup of tea. And by constantly looking for the 20% of things that are driving 80% of the activity, it allows you to focus on the components that are most important. For example, if you look at your customer base, you will often find that it's a small segment of the customers that are driving 80% of, say, the revenue or the profitability. And then the last thing to help with critical thinking. Remember the scientific method from high school? So be hypothesis driven in your thinking. And that includes being dispassionate about the results, right? So you don't care what the answer is, you're in the humble pursuit of the truth. And so what I mean by being hypothesis driven is that if you're not sure on a particular course of action or if something may work or not, state a hypothesis and then seek to prove or disprove it. So again, I'm trying to think of very, very super practical in the moment examples. So take this webinar as an example. So I was trying to get the word out to get maximum attendance to the webinar. Why? Well, because it's a lot more fun than talking to a blank screen, right? So I wanted to get the word out as much as possible. And I track everything. I know exactly where all the registrants on this call have come from. I know if they've come through the newsletter. I know if they've come through the CEO Accelerator company page, right? I know, if they've come through the CTA on a LinkedIn post. But I also tried another thing. So I started to send DMs from my account, right, to people who were engaging on my post, who I thought might enjoy a talk like this. Hey, I saw that you engaged in the post. I think you might also like this talk. I thought my hypothesis was that since I had gone from like nobody to having a voice on LinkedIn, that, oh, well, my hypothesis is that even though nobody responds to LinkedIn DMs, people will respond to my DMs because I've created this personal brand. Of course they will. Well, there was 246 registrants for this webinar in total. How many do you think came through the LinkedIn DMs? 1. Right? So I was dispassionate about, the result, but I employed the scientific method to test a hypothesis. I wanted to prove or disprove it. And so far, it's disproving that trying to get the word out by DMing on LinkedIn is a, viable or attractive channel. but it doesn't matter. I'm just being hypothesis driven. So be a critical thinker. Number 3, cognitive trait, ability. And then we're going to move into the one key interpersonal skill and the one key character trait. And again, if you're joining late, these are 5 qualities that I have found that are shared by all of the world's, the best CEOs that I've worked with, and certainly were important in my own journey as a CEO. So the number 3 cognitive ability is being decisive. It's one thing to think critically about a situation, and you gather and you evaluate the right information, but then you still need to make a decision. And too often, what I see is that people just sit on the fence. They take too long, to make decisions. And especially if you're in a leadership position, one of your key roles is you are, in a way, a decision-making engine, right? You are helping the organization rocket ahead and keep moving, keep that momentum going by helping them make decisions. It also is a pretty wise move to develop this decisiveness muscle or skill. In a study of over 2,600 leaders, and this is in the book, The CEO Next Door, decisive leaders were 12 times more likely to be successful than their peers. 12 times more likely to be successful than their peers. Okay. And I want you to consider a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing that you can do is nothing. Okay. So you have to prioritize speed over precision and momentum over stagnation. This is part of being decisive. You want to keep moving forward, doubling down on the right decisions, course correcting quickly on the wrong decision. So how do you actually become more decisive? Because many of you can be sitting there thinking, yes, but I tend to sit on the fence all the time. I agonize over information. I go into analysis paralysis. I boil the ocean for the hot cup of water. And that's not going to get you anywhere fast, right? So number 1 is recognize that human beings, we have something called a complexity bias, right? We tend to make things more difficult than they are. And a simple question that you can use to help fight this natural tendency is, what if this was easy? Literally ask yourself when you're sat there looking at this, key decision that you have to make. Should we enter this market or not? Should we develop this new product or not? Should we kill this and create more of that? Well, what if this was easy? And just ask yourself that question and see what emerges, because often your intuition will communicate something important. And that leads to number 2, trust your instincts. So Colin Powell has a 40-70 rule. The rule is, if you have less than 40% of total information, and if you make a decision on less than 40% of total information, it will probably be a poor decision. However, if you have greater than 70% of total information, in that pursuit of knowing perfectly for sure what to do, if you have greater than 70%, you're probably have taken too long to make the decision. So you have to get comfortable operating in that zone of uncertainty, knowing that you can always course correct, right, if needed, and make another decision. And then the last thing that you can do that can help with your decisiveness is to create distance. And one of the ways that you can create distance, so the former chairman and CEO of Intel, Andy Grove. So Intel went in a single year from 198 million in sales to 2 million. They were almost about to go completely out of business. And Andy said to, I think it was his CFO at the time, well, pretend that we got fired. What would we do? What would our replacement do? And then his colleague said, well, we get out of the memory chip business and we go straight into, processors. And so Andy said, well, why don't we walk out of the door right now and walk back in as if we're our own replacements? So ask yourself, if I were fired from my role, what would my replacement start doing? And what would my replacement stop doing? Because creating that distance can often illuminate the road forward and help make you more decisive. Often what can impede our ability to be decisive is because we have too much history or baggage attached with the decision making, too much emotion. Once again, if you've just joined the talk, I just put into the chat today's talk. These talks are in celebration of the CEO Accelerator. And the next cohort opens in January to help CEOs, senior leaders scale their companies, become world-class leaders and operate at their full potential. And you can join the waitlist for that right now. Okay, so we talked about 5 qualities. We just went through 3 cognitive abilities, and now we have 1 key interpersonal skill and 1 key character trait to help you level up as a leader. So the key interpersonal skill that we're going to be talking about is empathy, or being empathetic. And you might have heard this before, but the question is, yeah, but do you actually, are you practically trying to develop this skill? Do you even know why you should develop it, or how important it is to develop, right? Because this skill absolutely is fundamental to you leading at your best. And I just need to make one of my team members a host here. Sorry, there we go. Let me give you some stats here. So a study by the Center of Creator Leadership found that leaders with high emotional intelligence, which includes empathy, are more effective and successful. Studies showed that 75% of employees consider an empathetic boss to be more effective, and 65% of employees would work harder for a more empathetic leader. There's a disconnect, unfortunately, though, between theory and practice. So according to Harvard Business Review, while 78% of senior leaders acknowledge the importance of empathy, only 47% believe their companies are effectively practicing it. So how do we close the gap and lead more empathetically? 3 things here. Number 1, we want to show genuine interest. So take time to get to know your team members personally. You should know, their interests, strengths, challenges. Here's a question for you. Your close team members, do you know the names of their children, right? Do you know the names of do you know the name of their spouse or their partner? If you don't, you probably haven't taken the time to get to know them as a human being, as a person. Remember that they are a whole person. They're not just employee number or whatever in the organization, or a number on your team. Number 2, be accessible and approachable. Think about that for a moment. If people were to score you in your organization on your accessibility, on your approachability, on a scale of 1 to 10, how approachable is this person? What do you think? How do you think they would score you? Would they score you at 10? It's super easy to, go to this person and, state how you feel, ask them for support or help. They state, something in the middle of the road because you want to be viewed as accessible and approachable. And one of the things that you can do practically to help in this regard is schedule a office hours, right? A virtual office hours where people know that they can kind of plug into your calendar at a certain, I'm not saying, any time of the week they could just rock into the office, but there's a time in the calendar where they know that they can show up if needed and have a chat. And then number 3, and this is from Stephen Covey. He said it best in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit number 5 in that book was seek first to understand and then to be understood. And this is about being empathetic at its essence. And as a leader here, what's important to remember to practice active, and this is about active listening, and to practice active listening, you have to remember that you want to reflect back not just the rational part of what you're hearing, but also the emotional part. Because when you do that, the person feels more understood, more heard. So for example, if they state some kind of frustration, to you, don't just, the rest of my team is not performing to the level that I would want. Okay, well, why is that? Instead of going straight into that, say, okay, I hear what you're saying, right? And the rest of your team aren't hitting their goals, not hitting their standards, right? And the person's gonna nod their head. Exactly. And I can only imagine how frustrating that must be. right? So just making these statements, right, helps. As Maya Angelou, I'll leave you with a quote here. So as Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Okay, and then last but not least, we're going to go to, right, and okay. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to go to the last quality, and this is a character trait. Okay, a very key character trait. And it's beyond resilience. It's about being, and if I see some people who have been in my peak performance program, so you'll know this topic well, or some of the people that are currently in the CEO accelerator. So antifragility is beyond resilience. You know, the American boxer Mike Tyson, he once said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Why is this important? Because as leaders, as managers, we have to, deal with a lot of uncertainty. We have to protect our teams from that uncertainty. We have to deal with a lot more stress often. We have to make decisions, going back to the Colin Powell, for example, the 40 to 70 rule. We often have to make decisions on incomplete information. And you can think of antifragility as being, well, it's the opposite of fragile by definition. So what does this mean? This means that the more hits you take, the stronger you become, right? So resilient by definition, you absorb shock, you return to the same. To go beyond resilient is anti-fragile, whereby the more hits you take, the stronger you become. And that may seem like fairy tale speak to you, but fortunately, your body doesn't think that way, or else you wouldn't be on this call. And what do I mean by that? Well, how do you build an immune system? You expose it to germs and bacteria, right? How do you strengthen a muscle? You stress it, right? Nobody, for example, walks into a gym and says, I'd like to get into the best shape of my life. Can you please point me in the direction of the most comfortable weights? Like, we know that to strengthen ourselves physically, we have to be anti-fragile. That stress builds strength. And my point here is that as leaders, we can actively translate what goes on in our bodies physically upstairs in our heads mentally. And the first thing to do, so to give you some practical things, the first thing is just make sure that you're looking after yourself. Fundamentals. Are you sleeping as you should be? Is your nutrition right? Are you engaged in some kind of movement or exercise on a daily basis? You need the fundamentals right, or else it's very, very difficult to absorb shock, chaos, stress, and become stronger as a result of it. Next is to reframe your view of stress. So if you look at 3 groups of people, for example, and this is from the book, The Upside of Stress, one group experiences a relatively stress-free life. The second group experiences a high degree of stress, but views it positively. And the third group experiences a high degree of stress and views it negatively. Which group lives the longest? It's actually group number 2 that experiences a high degree of stress but views it positively. They outlive the group that experienced a low degree of stress. Like, really take that in, right? Because if you stress yourself out trying to run around to avoid stress, like, that's not your ticket to a life well lived, and you're not going to lead as well as you can, especially given, once again, that things will rarely go to plan, right? So you need to become stronger as a result of that, rather than constantly try to avoid it. And then one last practical tool is to help in this regard is conduct a pre-mortem, right? So when you're sat there with an important project with your team, die before you die. Ask the team to anticipate, fast forward 6 months ahead, this project has failed miserably. What do we all think would be the primary drivers of failure? And now let's list those out, and let's brainstorm ways in which we can mitigate those risks through better planning right now, better structuring of the project, better resourcing, better, a shifting of people in their positions on the field. Lots of the things that lead to failure, that lead to stress in an unhealthy way, could have been anticipated. But as long as we're not afraid of it. And a pre-mortem actually puts you right at the coalface, such that you consider it as a given. Of course, you don't want it to be a given, obviously, but it's a hypothetical exercise so that you can increase the probability of things going smoothly. But for you to do that, you need to be very, very comfortable intellectually with embracing stress on a regular, consistent, and daily basis. Right, there we go. Okay, so that was 5 qualities that I have seen in the CEOs that I've worked with and advised while at McKinsey Company, and these are some of the biggest companies in the world, building my own companies, having worked with over 100 CEOs and founders to date. And they are 3 cognitive abilities, once again. So being visionary, right? Thinking critically, being decisive, 1 key interpersonal skill, being empathetic, and 1 key character trait, becoming anti-fragile, whereby stress gives you strength. And if you develop these 5 things, I do believe you will distance yourself from the pack and create and achieve amazing things. I'll open things up for questions right now. And just before I do, I'm just going to put into the chat once again. So that is the CEO Accelerator. That's what this talk is in celebration of. If you are interested in joining a program, and this today has been more of like a lecture. In the CEO Accelerator, there's lots of exercises, interactivity. We workshop things together. It's a community. But if you want to level up, if you want help scaling your company, your leadership, or yourself, we are taking applications for the waitlist. You will be the first to know when enrollment reopens. And then if you're on the wait list, you'll have the first chance to join because the spaces will be limited to protect the experience. And the next cohort opens in January. So follow that link. If it does sound interesting, join the wait list, and I would love to help you level up. Danny, over to you for a question.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Super. Yeah.
Yeah. So what you say really good, really inspiring. But how do you, as a low manager or the bottom of the chain, do this so the team can advance? Do you understand my question? I mean, I'm in the bottom. I'm very fascinated by the things that you're saying, but how can I inspire people above me to take these actions, to be this way?
Yeah. So that is more challenging. But I think the starting point or the answer is the same if the leader is trying to do it the other way as well, which is through role modeling. The old was it Gandhi? Be the change that you want to see. Like if you want to role model the behaviors that you want to see. So if you would love if your leaders were more decisive, take these things that I've shown you today and start practicing them yourself. And in a meeting, when a decision is being made, offer up one of the tools and the techniques. Well, I think, one way in which we might be able to view this could be, picture that we've been replaced. And a new team comes in without our history and without any emotional baggage. What do we all think that new team would start doing or stop doing? In a way, teach the very things that I've been teaching today. And by teaching it, you're also going to further embed the knowledge and the learning for yourself too. So I would just try to role model and use opportunities in meetings to kind of showcase your knowledge, what you've learned, and encourage people to use the tools. Yeah. Azhar?
Yeah, thank you. Very, very interesting. I just want to bring in another aspect, Eric, if you permit me. All that you said is within the organization or the setup, but there's a lot happening outside the organization as well. So not necessarily in this order, but economic challenges, geopolitics, technology developments, competition, what's happening in the environment and the climate change. So all that, and I'm just naming a few. And I was in a leadership cohort recently. I work for a global bank, and I was at a session about 2 weeks ago. And a point was raised about Horizon 3 as to how things are evolving and how do we foresee as an organization to adapt proactively to those changes that are happening. And probably this is probably the first time in human history that so many changes are taking place simultaneously. It has probably never happened before. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on how to adapt, how to be more agile in the ever-changing, fluid environment in which we are operating.
Beautiful question. So this was when we talked about visionary leadership, which or acting and behaving and thinking in a visionary way. That was the first cognitive ability that we talked about, and we talked about 4 ways to develop that ability. And the third way, if you remember, was staying informed. And staying informed relates exactly to what's being said right now, because you can't create a plan for a 5-year vision and then lock yourself in a room for 5 years, right? Because things change. And then going back to the anti-fragile point, all this stuff is related. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? AI comes along and punches your business in the mouth, right? So these things are constantly happening. One of the most powerful ways, I think, to directly address what you just said is to process on 2 tracks. So one is to get the key stakeholders inside the company, even though we're talking about externalities, key stakeholders inside the company to poke holes in the company's current strategy, or to look for challenges as well as opportunities that are perhaps being overlooked. Right, so do some brainstorming around AI and quantum, or whatever these emerging tech opportunities or challenges, however you position them. But get the best of everyone's thinking in the organization, and it's especially important to invite to a meeting like that anyone who in the organization that is a champion of that, like it's like in their blood, like they want to they want to turn the entire company into an AI platform, let's say. Secondly, the second stream is to go outside. And so to seek and invite through your network, and you do this by literally, asking people in your network who are proficient, say, in some of these, or have strong opinions in these areas, or asking someone in your network who might know someone who does, right? So a second-degree connection, to see if they would come in for a session as well, where you provide a bit of context and you talk about, well, here's the business, here's the opportunities and the challenges that we see them. We would love for you to come in and talk about both of those 2 points as well. Like, what do you see as the opportunities? But I think even more importantly is asking that person to rip the business to shreds. So based on, this technology and what we've given you with the business, rip us apart. Tell us how you think we're going to get completely dismantled if we don't do X, Y, or Z. And the reason I say that, and I know it might sound a little bit harsh or negative, is that I think we have a tendency to just over-track on, oh, things are going to be fine, and we're going to just keep leveraging our strengths, and we're going to be okay. And we overlook, the train crossing, and then boom, we get hit. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you.
Right. Any other thoughts, questions? It could relate to today's session. I could go deeper on any of the cognitive abilities, or interpersonal skill, character trait, or at the same time could answer any questions that you might even specifically have about the CEO Accelerator. So any questions at all? Oh, I should mention one thing too about the CEO Accelerator. It's open for your team members. So if you're a CEO and you'd like to get your entire leadership team to level up with you, you can do that. So it's like a 80% discount on the enrollment fee per additional team member, right? So we have in the current accelerator, we have CEOs we have CEOs and their C-suite or certain members of the C-suite. We even have people in the CEO accelerator who are not CEOs, who are just senior leaders of a division, or who are aspiring for a CEO role, like they have that like in their sights, in the crosshairs. And the program is delivering value for all and community as well. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, one question about. Oh, sorry.
No, I'll go to the question in the chat here in a second. But Danny, go ahead. You continue, and then Jamson, I'll answer your question next.
Yeah. So you have the peak performance program. How what's the difference between the peak performance and the CEO?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Danny. I didn't fully read Jamson's message, and it's 2:30 a.m. for him. So let me just answer his question very, very quickly. So, Jamson, if you go to the CEO Accelerator page, if you go to the C program content, you'll get a description of the modules, like what you will learn in each class. And then in terms of like what the classes look like, the format, think of Wednesdays and Fridays. So Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5 p.m. UK time, from 3:30 to 5 p.m. is a masterclass on a topic, and you see all the topics in the on the page. And then the Friday is coaching and mentoring, which could be around that at the same time, 3:30 to 5 UK, which could be around that topic. And they're interactive, materials presented. There's Zoom breakout sessions, completing worksheets, assignments, taking quizzes, and getting the chance to interact with each other. So also feel free to, if you have further questions on the CEO Accelerator page, you'll see a contact us thing there as well. And you can always email me, and happy to answer your questions as well. So back to you, and there's my email, Jamson, if you just want to email me directly. So Danny, so difference between the Peak Performance Program and the CEO Accelerator. Yes, so the Peak Performance Program is more of a self-improvement course. So that is focused, I like to always think in threes. It's focused on identity-driven change, optimizing productivity, and the anti-fragility piece, so becoming more anti-fragile. There is some overlap in that content because of how fundamental it is in the CEO Accelerator, but it's only about 10% of that content is in the CEO Accelerator, about 90% is other things that relate to the scaling of a company, becoming a stronger leader, and just like operating at your full potential, which is the same as the Peak Performance Program. That's all about operating at your full potential. It's just that in the CEO Accelerator, it's more from like a very professional, like more like a business context. Okay. Yeah. Right. Any other questions before we sign off? No. Hello, Eric. Thank you for what was the study that determined? Yeah, okay. From Manal. So the book is called The Upside of Stress. So if you just look for the book, The Upside of Stress, and the research was in that book. Okay. The author's name is Kelly McGonigal. I can't pronounce that well. McGonigal, yeah. Kelly McGonigal. Right. Okay. Well, thanks very much for taking your time. Really enjoy these talks, and thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I'll be doing next week. Actually, I'm doing 3, and the one and they're all going to be related to the Peak Performance Program because we're taking it in our next cohort basically right now. Yeah, so there'll be more talks to come next week. But hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found it practical. And I hope to help as many of you possible within the CEO Accelerator. Awesome. Jamson said that he signed up for the waiting list. That's great to hear. Thank you. And excellent. Okay. Have a good one. And I'll talk to you all. See you all soon. Bye-bye.